Sportin Wales podcast.
Supported by DragonBet,
Your go-to for Welsh sports news and views.
Hello and welcome to the Sportin Wales podcast, sponsored by DragonBet and co-founded by Alex Cuthbert and Gareth Anscombe. I'm Geraint Hardy and I'm here to keep the guests in check as we look forward to the Sportin Wales week. Please remember to click follow and thanks for listening to this podcast. And this week on the pod, we have Daily Mail rugby journalist and a man that's broken several rugby stories, Alex Bywater, and former Wales forward and also former Cardiff captain, Josh Turnbull, but also a Scarlets boy as well. We can't forget that. A warm welcome to you both to the pod. Alex, let's come to you first. How's your off-season been? Do you get an off-season as a rugby journalist?
Yeah, thanks for having me. The seasons kind of seem to merge into each other, don't they? Like, you know, Wales obviously finishing up in Australia, and you know, some of the regions and the English Premiership clubs are back in pre-season training for the new campaign. So that they seem to merge together now these days. But for me, I've had a couple of weeks off. I haven't been to Australia. I've done a couple of other things outside of rugby around the Olympics, which has been nice for a bit of variety. So yeah, it has been a nice couple of down weeks, to be honest.
So Olympics, I mean, we'll talk about this for you, Josh, now. It's a kind of a sport, you know, everyone watches it and you find a new sport. Have you found a new sport before the Olympics starts?
Well, the interview that I went and did yesterday was with a show jumper. Okay. So I don't think I'll be show jumping anytime soon, but I'll be looking out for how the athlete I interviewed goes.
Did you have to do some research beforehand?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. My wife works in racing,
okay.
And she has horses, so she actually helped me set it up, and she's got some knowledge that she imparted on me on the way over. So yeah,
good stuff. All about the access, you see, Josh.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. Olympics, will you be getting involved in that?
No, it's not. It's always been something I've watched a lot of, but and I got two girls. They're mad keen. They'll watch anything sporty. So hopefully we'll have a good summer now watching some different sports.
Yeah, if anybody's interested in watching a sports documentary series, watch Sprint on Netflix. If you haven't seen that before the Olympics, Josh, I don't think you've watched it. Alex is nodding his head like he's watched it. Have you watched it?
No, I haven't.
It follows all the sprinters, male and female, across the world before the Olympics. It's fantastic. Fantastic access there. Josh, been a different summer for you because obviously you retired at the end of last season. So how have you found this summer with no grueling pre-season sessions?
Yeah, it's been a little bit different, to be honest. I've still chucked in a few grueling sessions because I've got my eye on doing something a little bit different coming up. Talk about that later. But yeah, it gave me a good opportunity. I had 6 weeks off just to switch off completely, let the body relax, just not have to worry about coming back into pre-season super fit and line out calls going through your head and all the different terminology, rugby terminology. But in that case, it's been great. But then starting the new job as an academy coach. So
yeah, tell us about that. So have you started already?
Yeah. So I literally, when I retired back in March, I started the following week. I started straight off the bat. It came about after the Leinster game. I trained a couple of weeks, and I got to say, I probably wasn't really enjoying it as much as I was after that 200th game. I think I just once you'd done it, it'd taken so long to get there.
Yeah.
I kind of just sat back and realised, look, I just gonna knock it on the head, and ended up over a couple of weeks. There was we had a Munster game coming up, and I said to Jockey, look, can we have a chat? On the Thursday, I said that to him. On a Friday, Richie Pugh rings me and says, do you want to come coach Wales 18s? Come Six Nations. And I was like, when he said one of the other coaches couldn't make it, so I said, yeah, would love to. And then, so I rung Jockey. They played Glasgow away, I think. Rung him on the Saturday. He rang me, said, look, any national age grade team come and ask you to coach them, you go and do it. It's a great experience. And this part of this year was about you transitioning across to coaching. And that'd been the plan. And literally did a couple of academy sessions, did the Sunday with the Wales, and then went away on the Thursday. And in between then, on the Tuesday, I think it was, I told Jockey that I was going to retire, and he was all happy with it. So, and then from there, literally, I was in with the academy then and just got stuck into it.
Yeah, great stuff. So the missus was planning a summer of holidays and stuff, and then you were like, I've retired, but I got a new job already.
Well, that nearly came back to bite me in the backside as well, because we booked to go to France, got to the airport, passport's out of date, over 10 years old.
No way.
Yeah, so Ryanair wouldn't let me fly with them.
Because of the new EU rules.
Yeah, EU rules. Yeah. Didn't know that. Just thought you had to have 6 months valid on your passport. Had that. EasyJet let me fly with them instead.
Oh, there you
so
go.
I got out there and had let the wife and the kids travel by themselves, take all the baggage.
Yeah, definitely fantastic. So when it comes to retirement, though, was that a difficult decision for you?
It kind of came about after, I'd had a pretty tough summer last summer. I had to have surgery. I had my fibula taken out, or part of my fibula cut out to offload my knee. So at the moment, my fib is like that. There's a gap in between it.
Okay.
And your fib only takes about 15 to 20% of your body weight. Going through it, your tib takes the rest. So it was a speculative operation. We wouldn't know where it was going to go afterwards, and I got it done and ended up having a couple of complications afterwards. Lost the use of my big toe. Like either the swelling had compressed the nerve, or there was some sort of damage to the nerve to the big toe. So had to get over that. Initially, it was going to be like 10 to 12 weeks off the pitch, and then ended up taking about 20, 24, something like that. Got back on the pitch and probably playing a little bit of catch up then after that. But now I actually feel really good. Really good.
No itch for pre-season at all?
Oh, there's been a little bit. You watch the big games, the finals and stuff, and like the Toulouse-Leinster game, Bath and Northampton final, really good finals to watch. Tough to watch because you want to, ultimately you want to go out there and test yourself against the best people, but the best players. And I now know that probably not going to do that again, but in terms of my new job, I can help create some of those youngsters to give them an opportunity to go and do that themselves.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Josh touched there, Alex, on his toe and the big operation he had as well. Do you think slightly for people watching rugby from the outside in, maybe parents and kind of youngsters, that rugby's becoming less of an appealing game to kind of go into?
That's an insight into what it's like to be a professional, isn't it? A bit of your leg bone missing and
do you know
losing
what I mean?
the use of your toe. I think it would only be inevitable, really, and a reality if some parents didn't want their young children to play. Obviously, there's the whole wider issue with the head injury litigation that's going on with ex-players at the moment. That's a huge issue for World Rugby, the RFU and the WRU. Obviously, that's ongoing at the moment. But I think it would only be natural if some parents had reticence at their children playing rugby. I think it's different at children and youth level. But then clearly when you get to sort of 15, 16, and then you're playing competitive, and then, if you're good enough, you're then going up to the professional standards. There is concern there, I think, yeah. Yeah.
Have you come across rugby players that have said themselves, because I know one rugby player, I won't name the rugby player, said, I don't want my kids playing rugby. And that's a concern for me. Josh, I mean, I know you got two girls. Is that something that you kind of think, oh, God, I don't want them doing that?
My youngest one's tried it. My eldest one, she's like, "Oh, let me go play rugby. Let me play." She's like, we call her sport Barbie, because she literally likes to try everything, get all the gear, but then doesn't really follow through with it. So.
Nightmare.
And she tried track. The youngest one, she's really stuck at football, and she's done it for the last 3-4 years. She's given rugby a little bit of a dabble. You've got to make them make their own decisions. Yeah. She hasn't really done it for the last 6 months, but. Ultimately they've got to test the waters themselves, and I think you don't really know until you try it. With girls though, there's a quicker progression because the sports that they play in schools and stuff, a lot of netball, their hand-eye coordination is better than boys, whereas boys play a lot of football, so they can pick up the skills a lot easier, and that's probably why you see a quicker progression with some of them.
I was watching the Road to Principality games, so you go from I think then they're 11s last year primary school all the way through, and there's girls and boys, and the girls' skill sets in some of the games were incredible. They were playing free-flowing rugby, less tackles, less hits, but entertainment-wise, it was absolutely fantastic. So that echoes kind of.
The other thing is the ball in play time in a women's or girls' rugby is a lot higher than men's, purely because they can't kick the ball as far. And then a little bit less accurate with that kicking game, so the ball stays on the field for longer. Yeah. So they have longer phases of play, and sometimes it can be a little bit more entertaining, just because of that. Yeah. Go back to the original question. I think they've got to be able to make their own decisions. It can be quite a good sport to play. It is a very good sport to play. It's really enjoyable. You get so much joy out of it.
Yeah. No regrets from your end.
Nah.
Not even the gap in the
there's obviously there's all the head stuff. They're being a lot more proactive with that now, especially in the last 4, 5, 6 years. The gum shields, the tests before you play, the swab tests if you get a concussion, getting you back to a baseline before you go back on the field. They're cross-referencing everything now to make sure that that you're fit to play. Bumps and bruises in terms of like you're probably not going to go through a rugby career now without having some sort of surgery at some point. Shoulders, knees, ankles. Just because of the stress, the impacts of the collisions that go through you. You look at the South Africa Island game last week. South Africa come away there with 2 broken legs and a couple of big shoulder injuries and head concussions. So the game is becoming more physical.
Yeah, I remember ages ago seeing one of your tweets, Sal, about Gareth Anscombe when he slotted a kick, and you kind of highlighted what he'd actually gone through to kind of recover.
Yeah, well, it's what some of the players at the elite level have to go through now in terms of their physical toll on their bodies is unbelievable. Josh has just given a little insight there into what he's been through. And, Gareth Anscombe, obviously, I think I was the sort of first guy to interview him after he'd had his broken leg and, knee issue, and then the broken leg to realign it. And yeah, he told me about how he had the bone graft from a dead man. I mean, it's crazy. It's like you
can't even put how. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah. Well, us mere mortals who sit on the sidelines, it's difficult to understand 100%.
Yeah. Listen, Al, with the Daily Mail, you are kind of growing a reputation fast for some big scoops. We'll talk about some of them in detail if we can in a bit. But a new one that's broke this week is the Bristol Bears coming to the Principality. So tell us a bit more about that and what you know about how that came about.
So yesterday, Bristol confirmed that they're going to play a Premiership game on May the 10th at the Principality. So it'll be the first time an English Premiership game will be played in Cardiff. The opposition for that game is yet to be decided. It'll be announced when the Premiership confirm their fixtures next week.
Yeah.
And I think there's 2 different strands to it, really. If you look at it from the Bristol end, I think it's a really exciting thing. They can take their home games to a much bigger stadium, have a much bigger audience, grow their brand. But then the flip side of that is what that means for Welsh rugby. Now, the short-term situation is that the Welsh Rugby Union will get a fee from Bristol Bears to hosting the game.
We don't know the fee, do we?
We don't know the fee, no.
Yeah.
And it's unlikely that they will
ever tell us.
No.
Yeah, okay.
But then the wider issue there is, is there a concern that, for example, Welsh regions might lose fans who would go and watch that game? Then they think, well, next week I'll go over to Ashton Gate and watch Bristol against Northampton or whoever, instead of going to the Cardiff Arms Park or to Rodney Parade or the Ospreys or the Scarlets. I think that's a real genuine concern among certain people. So there's a debate to be had, I think, about whether taking the money for the game, which we all know we need in Welsh rugby at the moment, against, is there long-term thinking there in terms of the implications it could have?
Yeah, I personally, as a Cardiff boy, find the thing absolutely mad. Do you know what I mean? In my head, the concept of any Cardiff fan going over to support Bristol it can't happen.
It's like Sarri's going to play up in Osprey's going to play up in London.
Yeah.
So, we're moaning that they're coming to play in Wales. They're trying to get a different audience, aren't they? Or attract a different audience. But it's like the Ospreys going to play up in London. They're trying to get to a different audience base, pick up new supporters. So, we, at the time, some people said it wasn't a good idea. Other people said it was. But, I guess you've got to do what helps your club that be successful in terms of, getting crowds to come and watch you.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose if you compare to football, because they're both in the same league, that comparison Cardiff fans will never go support Bristol. There's an intense rivalry there. But because perhaps they're in 2 different leagues, maybe your suggestion of kind of Cardiff or Welsh fans could go over to start following Bristol could actually happen, though.
I think there's a real possibility that it does, and I know for a fact that there are Welsh fans of regional rugby who go over to Bristol, Bath, Gloucester, Exeter to watch the games. And the reason I know that is that I live in Cardiff, and most of the time with my job, I'm covering Gallagher Premiership Club games.
Yeah.
So if I go to Bath or Bristol, I often get the train, and I
see the fans.
Yeah. So I'm not saying there's hundreds and thousands of them, but it is happening.
Yeah.
And if that continues, and let's be honest, the product that's on show in the Gallagher Premiership at the moment is a lot better than what's being shown in the URC.
Yeah, and I think that drives the fear, right? From my point of view, anyway. I'm like, oh no, I don't. It kind of. What would you say to that, Josh?
I just look back at what Cardiff did last year in terms of selling out the Arms Park a number of occasions. Bath, Sale the year before, Bath, Quins.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times the drum has to be banged, but an Anglo Welsh league would be fantastic. It really would. I think bring back those old cross-border rivalries. The URC was exciting when it first started because you're traveling somewhere new. You're going to South Africa. You're playing against the best South African players, especially when they took out the Kings and the Cheetahs. You're playing against their 4 big teams. But I think in terms of the traveling, the novelty's worn off a little bit now, and it would be good. I think it would be exciting to have an Anglo Welsh league. Really would.
But we got this situation now in May where we'll have, Bristol against someone in Cardiff.
Yeah.
And that weekend, Cardiff are playing in South Africa.
Yeah.
So if you'd said
gosh.
that to us 5-10 years ago, you'd have thought you were mad.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of what we're dealing with in rugby at the moment, I think.
I think it is mad still. Do you know what I mean? If I'm honest. So how do you become, as a journalist? 'Cause I'm really interested in this. How do you become the person to get the scoop? Is that people coming to you, or do you go and find them?
A little bit of both is the short answer. The first thing to say is, I guess, something actually has to happen for you to get the. So, you can't go and make
it up.
You can't go and make it up and make up what happens. And then from there, I guess it's you either go and find it out yourself, or you hear about, something that might lead to that. And then, or some people come to you, and generally the reason that happens is because they trust you and they've built a relationship with you over a period of time. Like, I've mainly been covering Welsh rugby now for 12 years or so, a bit more. So, through that time, you build relationships with players and coaches and agents, and then it goes from there, really.
Yeah. It's often heard in football that players deliberately go and speak to the press, quietly, or an agent will go and speak to the press. People know that happens in football. Does that also happen in rugby?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the people.
I think it happens in most sports, really.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. And so, for example, let's take some of your most recent ones. Sam Parry situation that caused carnage. We spoke about it here. So you broke that story. So how did that come about? If you can divulge what you're happy to, really. You're not going to say who's my contact as such, but what can you share about how that story became from something to print?
So it was ahead of the South Africa game, wasn't it? I'm just trying to remember because everything's gone so quickly the last year or so. It's been a crazy season. So the first thing really was that week. I noticed on the footage of Wales training that they had Ethan Daniel and one other hooker whose name I forget off the top of my head. Sorry, both in training with Wales. And they were pictured on all the footage throwing in at the line out in training. And immediately my reaction was, "Oh, I wonder why they're there." And obviously, they could be there for any number of reasons. Some that could be a story and some that could not. But I noticed that those two were there and Elliot D wasn't, which immediately got sort of I was like, "Oh, I wonder why that's the case." And then just made a couple of phone calls, and it sort of became quickly apparent that Elliot was injured and out of the tour. And then I was like, "Oh, that probably means Sam Parry will be the next one in line, in theory, because he'd obviously been named in the original squad, and Ethan Daniel hadn't."
Yeah.
So I was thinking, well, presumably that means he'll be in line to go to Australia. And then I noticed on the back of that Sam Parry wasn't in the training. And then, a few more phone calls, and it sort of became apparent what had happened, really.
Yeah. So in that first phone call, sorry, I am interested in this. Are you ringing the WRU going, "Where are the boys? Why are they not training?" Or are you ringing them direct, or are you ringing agents?
Players and agents mainly.
Yeah.
And then obviously you have to go to them for the comment and to say, like, well, once I'd sort of found out that
the story.
Yeah. Because if you know, not just the WRU, but any governing body or team, if you went to them and said, well, why is Sam Parry not trained? They're not going to tell you that he's walked out the squad, are they?
Yeah.
So,
but they didn't even reply to that, did they? Your article initially, they didn't give you a comment.
No.
Yeah. So, do you want a comment normally from a journalist point of view?
Yeah, because you have to be balanced in your reporting. So the story was that Sam had left the Wales squad, but until you go to them, you don't know what their perspective on it is. There might have been any number of reasons from their point of view why Sam walked out. I had the fact that he'd walked out of the squad, and I knew that had happened, and I believed I knew the reasons why. But yeah, I went to them for a right of reply, and there was nothing from them.
Yeah.
But
are you buzzing when that happens? You must be like, yes, I've got a scoop. This is like an exclusive. I can't wait to drop this. Do you know what I mean?
There's obviously a bit of like apprehension as well, because you know, often, you know, not every story, but sometimes there'll be a bit of kickback and controversy and people discussing it on Twitter and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's a little bit of apprehension, but it's funny because I think a lot of people think journalists, like, you know, really get off on the controversy or whatever. But, you know, I've been really fortunate in my time to cover like Wales being world number one, winning Grand Slams, being in World Cup semi-finals all around the world. I'd much rather cover those things than the bad things that have happened over the last sort of 2 years.
Do you know what? It's funny that you say that, because I was thinking about kind of this chat today, and I was thinking being negative, it is difficult. You don't want to be negative about a sport that you love either.
No, of course. Like, you know, you get on better with the players and the coaches when you're winning. It's human nature. If the players and the coaches are winning, they're happier, they're more willing to speak to you. You know, the mood is positive. We're reporting generally great things. And like I said, I've been very fortunate to do that on some really successful Wales teams. And then the flip side of that is the reality is, if the team's struggling like they are at the moment on the run of losses that they are, the mood can be difficult. You know, it's unlikely that you're going to get people knocking your door down to talk to you when you're on a run of 9 straight defeats and things are tense. So yeah, there's definitely a perception, I think, that especially in Welsh, you know, in Welsh rugby, there's, you know, probably is correct to say people love to be negative, don't they? But certainly from my perspective as a journalist, I'd much rather be reporting on successful Wales teams than sort of the current situations that we've had in the last, 2 years or so.
Yeah. Josh, ever been kind of pushing your agent or kind of pushing an agenda to the press yourself, or kind of stays clear of stuff like that?
Oh, I think, you know, when was it 2 years ago now, the pay banding, things like that, and obviously the contractual issues, I was pretty vocal through that period. Ended up on Scrum 5 calling Malcolm Wall out. You know, it was I put a statement out myself. You know, I just felt like it was the right time. You know, I had a number of conversations with media people, because it just wasn't fair, because we weren't getting any answers. And I think sometimes ultimately you've got to, you know, the players just wanted their security, and we ended up losing a couple across the bridge, and others went and sought jobs in other countries as well, or clubs in other countries. You know, it's tough because you see what boys go through, and you know, at the time I had job security, but it wasn't fair on some of those boys, and I felt like it was probably affecting us within our environment a little bit, and you know, the performances that we were having on the field. So, you know, that's probably the only time I've really gone pushing any agendas or seeking media.
What you mean by job security is that your contract ran beyond that season, right? And then some players' contracts were running out that year.
That year, and the financial issue with the union hadn't been sorted out, and obviously it nearly ended up with a strike with the England Wales game, because obviously the boys in the camp, they had their agenda, and the regional players had their agenda, and then you've got Gareth Lewis from the WRPA who's trying to manage both sides of it. You know, players outside of the international environment wanted different things to what the international boys wanted, so it was trying to get that. You know, we ended up getting us all in a room and together in the Vale and having a conversation about it. So
I mean,
yeah, we're pretty close to going there again, probably. But no, it's ultimately, I think it is where it is at the moment. We need to take a little bit of pain with Welsh rugby. That's on the field as well, because we're talking about younger players and things like that. The last week, I think James Slipper had more caps by himself than the whole front five of Wales. So.
Yeah, speaking of young players, though, Cardiff are kind of, I don't know, their plan kind of catapulted forward a few years because of the situation. We saw so much young talent come through last season. Who really stood out for you and really impressed for you? Because the list, to be fair, it's massive, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You've got Cam Winnett, Man Grady, Evan Lloyd is there, Mackenzie Martin, Ellis Bevan, Cabango. There was a nucleus. The team they were so young.
I remember having this when I was starting to come back fit last season, and I was having the conversation with Jockey about where I was going to fit in. He said, "Look, I've got to play the youngsters because ultimately you're not going to be around forever." And he had the same conversation with Ellis Jenkins and a number of the senior players. Ray was another one. We're not going to just keep going. Batteries are going to run out at some point. So he said to me, "I'm going to have to play some youngsters. I need to give them 12 to 15 games of experience." Throughout this year, because ultimately the kickback from that then will be this season, next season. Those players, when obviously we lost something like 9 or 11 losing bonus points, and some of them within one score.
Yeah.
So, if you can flip that on its head, you're looking at being in the, you're definitely in the top 8. You're going to be close to the top 4 if you won all of them, and those experiences, those losses would be invaluable to those players because they'll learn and they'll take that away to next season, the season afterwards. That's when they'll get a kickback, and hopefully Cardiff will be winning those games. The experiences those boys would have picked up.
Who are the natural leaders, do you think, within that kind of, who can take Cardiff to that next level and potential future captains? Because I think these days players are a bit more shy, would you say, Alex? And they don't give as much when they play in, potentially kind of in years begone. So who could be maybe kind of...
I got to say, Liam Belcher did a fantastic job standing last year while I wasn't there. Or he, as vice captain last year, he was excellent.
Yeah.
He pretty much took the reins on then towards the end of the season, and he led by example. He doesn't say too much; he just leads with his actions. Alex Mann is definitely one for the future. We already see that he captained Wales 20s for 2 years on the bounce, and one of those being a year young, so obviously showed that he's got a lot of respect within his peers, and he's definitely going to be one for the future. I'm not really sure who else in there at the moment you'd say has got captaincy written over them at the moment, other than Liam and Alex Mann. But in terms of what those players, where they're going to go next, progression wise, Cam Winnett's probably one of the most professional players I've ever come across. For a youngster, 20, 21 years old, does all the little things well, all the fundamentals really well. You've got someone like Mackenzie Martin, who's 120 something kilos, naturally that big, explosive ball carrier. I was tough on him last year. He turned up late a couple of times. He probably played more fines than last year in the first 5-6 weeks of being a senior professional than anyone ever has. But
really,
yeah, I just think because he'd had probably a little bit of a shock to the system. Like, we didn't take being late very well, so we had to get that out of him. And he's really kicked on since then. Since that Stormers game at home, he had a real good run of games. And the good thing is that they're now in that international window, and we're talking about international rugby. Well, those players will be learning up there as well, and people are saying, "Oh, Gats has got to go." Well, who are we going to bring in? If you took Gats out of the picture, what's it going to change? You're going to get another coach in who's going to still be in the same situation with the same players. So ultimately, those players have got to learn how to play international rugby. Doesn't matter who's coaching them, they've got to get those experiences. And like we talked about, James Slipper having 120 odd caps, and he had more caps than the whole front 5 of Wales last week. Eventually, if these players continue to play, and it's exactly the same as you go back to 2011 when we started breaking in, a load of players came through around that same time. Warby, Lids, Tips, self, Priestland, Foxy, Ken, Scott Williams, Gareth Davis. You know, they didn't win things straight away. It took a couple of years.
Yeah.
You know, they go at 2012, 2013.
Well, there was eight losses on the bounce in that period, right? At some point.
You know, you've got to take the. You know, they put a good performance in last week, so they are growing. They're getting better. It's just you can't go calling for heads when ultimately you're gonna still end up in the same situation.
We'll come back to Gats quickly in a bit, but about kind of you policed that. You decided that he was going to get a fine, right, for being late. So you call that, right? So you are an experienced pro within that squad. So you're creating the culture within the dressing room. Is there a fear kind of in this tour or kind of generally going forward that these boys can create because they haven't got no one to show the ropes as such? That's my fear. There's not much experience in the Wales team, if you like.
Yeah,
so
they've got players who are in good environments. Yeah. So they've got the extra boys. It's a good environment extra. They've shown that because they've won a number of trophies on the bounce. Those players there would have, Dav Jenkins and Chris Chinza would have learnt off the senior pros who would have been an extra. They can start to instill that into those other players there that are around them. Hopefully, the boys who are in that environment, look, Corey Hill's going to come up, but Corey Hill's been a professional rugby player for a long time now. He'd be a senior player in that environment. Dewi Lakes, has been the Ospreys. He's learnt off Tips. He's going to drive standards. Okay, Costello's another one. Gareth Davis is on tour. Those boys have been around a long time. They know what it's like, and they can instill some of that, professionalism in them, and those good behaviours that drive high standards.
You mentioned it, so we'll have to talk about it, Al. You brought this up, Josh, not me. Gats, what do you think is the future? Do Wales benefit by kind of getting rid of Warren Gatland?
Not in any way. And I take Josh's point and I agree with that. But Wales and the Welsh Rugby Union are really struggling financially at the moment. Only, 2 years ago, 18 months ago, they sacked Wayne Pivac, Stephen Jones, Gethin Jenkins, which cost them a lot of money. So if they decided to get rid of Warren Gatland, well, the reality is they can't afford to do that. So even if that was the decision that they'd made, the reality is that they simply can't afford to do that. So I think there has to be a degree of continuity on that front. The second test against Australia, I thought there were some signs of progression. I thought they were small, but I think the tour's gone probably as everyone predicted, if I'm honest, and that's sort of the sad reality of the situation at the moment. One thing that does frustrate me a little bit is this whole narrative around, Wales are where we are and we've got to build and we've got to start again. And that is a reality because I don't think there's any other players out there that really, maybe barring one or two, that you'd say, oh, well, they've got to be in the team and they're not currently. But the thing that frustrates me is that a lot of the situation in terms of the team at the moment is as a result of how the game has been managed. And I think certain, people need to take accountability for that. So if you're looking at tight head, for example, Archie Griffin's done really well in the last 2 games against Australia, but they were his first 2 professional starts in senior rugby. So while he's got to learn on the job and keep going, the question I'd ask is, well, why is Thomas Francis not playing? And the reason Thomas Francis is not playing is because he's moved to France for a better contract and better job security because he couldn't get that in Wales because of the mismanagement of the game. And I don't think it's pretty obvious that if Thomas Francis was involved in this Wales setup currently, they'd be doing a lot better. And that's just one example. You've got Regan Grace playing against the Reds. He's never played a competitive game of rugby union.
Yeah.
In the Six Nations, Evan Lloyd came off the bench and he'd never started a professional game. There's no other tier 1 union that's operating like this. There isn't,
So does the current infrastructure and kind of what's been released of the last few months, kind of a strategy going forward, does that build you with any hope?
Well, it's too far gone, isn't it, now, for certain things? So the situation that we have now is what it is.
But for example, we can say, people in the past have done mistakes. We all know that. So at some point we have to park it, right? You can't just keep saying, well, they've done a mistake and live in that with that. So we have to park that and go, right, how do we improve? How do we build? So kind of from what you've seen kind of on the pitch and some of the things off the pitch with Abitini, kind of her strategy starting to kind of become clearer. We'll find more in October, obviously. Do you, as a fan and also from a professional point of view, have hope kind of Wales can turn this around?
Yes, I think we'll know more from the strategy later this year. I think we need to know a lot more before we can say, oh, yeah, it's all bells and whistles. But there are promising young players coming through. We mentioned Archie Griffin as one, but they're going to need a lot of time to learn. And the difference is, I think, when Warren Gatland was in charge of really successful teams, he would drop in young players surrounded by a core of experience, and maybe one or two can learn on the job because they've got all the experience around them. Whereas now we've got 8, 9, 10, 11 learning on the job with young captains. And I just think it's going to be a really difficult couple of years. Yeah.
Gats has said, though, Josh, this team's going to be a good team in the future. You've seen enough in them already. You've seen them week out in training as well. Do you echo that, or are there some kind of things that you want to see changed to kind of make sure we do get to that point?
Look, I think, we are, because those players are good rugby players. They're tough kids. They want to learn. They want to get better. They won't be happy that they've had, how many losses? 9 on the bounce, 9, is it? Well, we play the game because we want to win. That's why you do it. You don't do it because you want to lose games. You do it with your mates because you want to win, and those boys will be working, their socks off to make sure they get those W's. And when they do, they'll enjoy it more. And granted, they're going to have to go through a little bit of pain on the way to get in there, because the experience just doesn't. You get that by playing, and you've got to play. You can't just pluck it off the tree like an apple. It just doesn't happen like that. It's it takes time, and we're going to have to be patient with them, and hopefully patient with the regions as well. What I will say is there is some really good youngsters underneath this crop of youngsters coming through as well. You look at the 20s. Okay, they haven't had the best of World Cups, but there's been some good performances in there. Yeah. There's been some good performances from individuals. Louis Hennessy being one. Steph Manuel is 2 years young, 17 years old. Played 18s this year as well. He's going to be a great player. Boys are starting to turn now to come back to Wales. Though him and Tom Bowen have both re-signed for Cardiff, they're coming back. Granted, they went across the bridge for schooling purposes, but they've come back to play professional rugby in Wales. And it'd be good to see more of those youngsters coming back as well. There is other good players. Ryan Woodman's already played a number of games for the Dragons. Okay, Morgan Morse is 23 games at under 20s level. He could play next year. So, and that's frightening. Hopefully he comes back, he gets an opportunity with the Ospreys, and he kicks on, he grabs that opportunity and takes it on. And even at under 18s, there's more good quality youngsters coming through. They had a really, really good, although we lost to England in the last play of the game, and we lost to a very good French team, the 18s had a really successful, I'd take it away as a successful Six Nations tournament. There's some really good youngsters coming through. Tom Howe at Cardiff. Sonny McCabe's another youngster coming through at Cardiff, second row. Teddy Williams' younger brother is coming through. He's underneath that academy group at the moment, but he's similar stature to what Teddy was when he was 16 years old. He is. So, there's an Elijah Evans is away with the 20s now. Cody Stone's away with the 20s now.
There's a lot of talent there you're mentioning. Yeah. I suppose, Alex, the fear is that from Wales' point of view, okay, if we can make sure they play for Wales, great. But the fear is that they don't play for our regional clubs, and we don't keep them in Wales. Is that a fear that you echo?
Not so much for the younger guys.
Why?
Because the regional coaches haven't really got any other choice other than to play them at the moment, which guarantees that they'll get minutes. I think what the concern would be is when those regional players then become established in the Wales team and are regular playing minutes at regional level, I know he's injured at the moment, but someone like Jack Morgan, he's captain the team. I'm not sure how old he is off the top of my head, but 24-ish. I think it's someone like him now that's going to be the real players like him, because I'm sure English clubs are going to be looking at him and going, well, we'd love you in our team. Obviously then, and then he might think, well, hang on, is Wales where I want to be? I can earn a lot more.
Yeah.
So it's the guys that hit that 23, 24 bracket, I think, that once they've played a few tests and start to make the name themselves, that they're the ones that I think are concerned about losing. And we've seen that en masse in the last...
What's your thoughts on 25 cap
months? My thoughts on the 25 cap rule are that it works if you have a strong, thriving rugby ecosystem in Wales. So the players that have left, if they were being paid, if they could earn their market rate and were playing competitive winning rugby in Wales, I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but I would imagine that maybe a lot of them would have stayed. And that's why I think the 25 cap rule works at that mark rather than 60. However, it's quite clear that the Welsh rugby ecosystem is not thriving and it's not successful, which is why we've seen players en masse leave. You know, Dylan Lewis, Jared Evans, Thomas Williams. That's just 3, but there's obviously been lots of them. So I would imagine that it's pretty close to going.
Yeah.
I think and Warren Gatland said recently on the tour of Australia that, you know, he's not a fan of it, and I think I'm not sure he would say it publicly because obviously it's the WRU's policy, but I think he would be happy if it went.
What's your thoughts on it? I mean, it must have come up in the strike talks as well back?
Yeah, well, that was one of the big things the international boys were pushing, and I don't think we're a big enough nation to
implement
it. I think we're kind of cutting off our nose a little bit in terms of the quality of player that's playing across the bridge. That you could have in your squad. In terms of some positions as well, it would, you know, Joe Hawkins at 12, Maxwell is another one, Jared at 10. There's probably a number of others who we probably don't even know about the Union do because they've got them on their depth charts. But at the moment, I don't think we've got enough players in Wales, quality players at international standard to implement that 25 cap rule. And then it probably goes back to, well, how can you entice players to stay in Wales? Do you give them a bigger bonus if they play for Wales and they stay in Wales than if they do to go? You can let them go and play across the bridge, but you'll still pick them, but they won't get the same bonus that you would get if you're playing in Wales. So, you know, that's just one way of doing it. But I think that we need probably to be able to pick our best players.
Yeah, definitely handicaps Wales, doesn't it? That's for sure. I think it's something that hopefully
Australia haven't picked any of their overseas players for these games against Wales.
Yeah.
And you're looking at someone like Will Skelton would make a massive difference in there. There's a number of others who are playing in Japan and France that he could have picked, but Joe Schmidt has gone and picked local boys in Australia who he wants to find out about his squad, build some squad depth. I just don't think at the moment we're a big enough country to do that.
Yeah. Let's move on if we can quickly. Corey Hill, captain. Al, behind that, you know, he's been involved in some controversy. Obviously, he kind of potentially served his time with that. He's been away to play and he's come back. What's your thoughts generally about him being picked as captain?
So obviously there was the incident with him in 21, which he apologised for at the time through his agent. But my belief is that it was handled so badly at the time that if back then, you know, he'd done some sort of press conference through the Welsh Rugby or through Cardiff, who he was employed with at the time, it would have nipped it in the bud. Whereas 3 years on, we're still talking about it and he's having to answer questions about it. And my belief is, you know, he's made a mistake, which he's admitted in the press, speaking in Brisbane today. But he should be allowed to carry on playing his career. There was no legal charge. It was never raised. He made a mistake, but we've all made mistakes. And he should be allowed to carry on. And he's exactly the sort of player that is really key for Wales. He's an experienced international at the moment. And he's someone that the young players can be looking around. I thought it was really noticeable in the second test after the final whistle that he was a bench player, but he was given a talk to the players because they're looking to someone like him for leadership. So he made a mistake. He's admitted that he made a mistake, but you know, people have done a hell of a lot worse and carried on playing international rugby. I probably don't need to name names, but I think everyone knows that certain people have done a hell of a lot worse and carried on. So I don't think there's a problem.
Yeah.
I was just about to say that. Like, people have done far worse and been picked 6 months later.
Yeah.
So,
but as a player though, Josh, as in the perfect person to captain that game and kind of lead the boys, is that what they need kind of on the last game of the tour?
Yeah, because they've got young, inexperienced. They've got new caps. They've got boys who haven't even played international rugby, haven't even played a game in rugby union. So in terms of giving them, the direction that they need to go in, like we talked about Regan Grace just a minute ago, never played a game in rugby union, and he's been picked, but ultimately they want to find out about him.
Yeah,
there's a number of other players. Evan Daniels on the bench, Evan Lloyd. He hasn't started many games at regional rugby, let alone international level. You can find out a lot in these midweek games, and hopefully Corey can just get the best out of those boys.
Yeah, is the Regan Grace thing just a matter of just capping him? Do you think just in case you can develops as they want him to?
I don't think it's a case of necessarily capping him. Like, for example, if he was dual qualified like Josh Hathaway, I think that was definitely a case of we want you to play for Wales, so we'll not give you a cap because he obviously earned his selection on merit. Got to remember, Grace wasn't in the original squad. He came in because Keelan Giles was injured, so there's a degree of that as well. But Warren Gatland's been quite clear that he wanted to give pretty much everyone a run that went on the tour in this game. But I think it is a little bit of a potential banana skin for Wales. And then, were they to lose, I know it's not a capped game and an official test match, but, I think it's a potential banana skin on Friday.
Yeah. You kind of hope it goes well because he's been chucked in so much. Do you know what I mean? I know maybe some professionals, like, see it from your face, you're thinking, how on earth is this happening? Is it fair? Maybe some people
I've played in 3 of them, though, so I kind of know what they're like. I played against the Kings in 2014, Brumbies in 2012, and the Chiefs, and we got absolutely smashed by the Chiefs in 2016. And it was, they put 40 points on us. So it's like, you do find out a lot about players in your squad. And, you've got to treat it like a test match. So, and on the Regan Grace thing, I think ultimately if you watch him when he's played rugby league, he's got some unbelievable gas and he's got an unbelievable finishing record. So if you can tap into that and get him to bring that, that's his X factor. If you can bring that into rugby union, hopefully Bath can have a gem on their hands. Yeah,
but defensive, you're going to have to learn a lot quick, right?
Yeah, you do, and it's different playing league to union defensively. So hopefully you can pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, be honest now, right? The rest of the boys on the tour who are not playing, they're having a little kind of stag do right now, right? Surely.
Oh, you'd like to think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they got to make
book club on Thursday night, 100%.
Yeah, okay. But hopefully, I'm thinking hopefully the boys who are actually playing, the likes of Regan Grace are not. They're treating it as serious as you said, as a test match.
Yeah, I remember going on those tours. I was fortunate enough to go on all of them, and you do have the opportunity to have a downtime and enjoy yourselves. And those boys probably would have done it Saturday after that second test, and the boys who were not involved this week will be there to support those players who are playing, and hopefully they get a couple of extra sessions in as well. Yeah.
When you go on tour as well, because obviously as a journalist, do you mix with the players? Do you see the players, or do they avoid you like the plague? Because you're like, I've seen them in a pub.
I've definitely been on tours where we've bumped into players in the same bar. And to be honest, I think it's a mutual thing where we obviously don't want to step on their toes. And they probably think
the same.
Well, they think, what's the word? I'm trying to think of a PC. We don't want to see you.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, that's fine.
I remember there was on the 2017 Lions tour. I think it was at the end of the tour, but it was definitely after the test matches had finished.
It was week 1.
No, it wasn't.
Mistaken identity.
And there was a group of us journalists around sort of one side of the bar, and we weren't aware that basically the entire team was around the other side of the bar. But they had like an area, not like a private area, but it was like right next to the toilets. So like the first time one of the group of journalists went to the toilets, he came back and he was like, "Oh no." But to be fair, after that, there was a bit of mixing and stuff.
Yeah.
But that was a successful tour, so it's different if. And then definitely had a similar one in Samoa. That was 2017 as well. After Wales had won in Apia, had the same thing where I was just doing I was actually completely on my own doing my work, and then the whole squad came in for their end of tour book club, should we say? And I got out of there pretty quick.
They should invite you in if you're on your own. Do you know what I mean? What's your favourite tour, Coro? Josh, you've been on?
Oh, from a playing perspective, it was South Africa 2014.
Okay.
Was on the bench in the first test and started the second test, and just it was 2 phenomenal test matches to play in. Played against some people who I'd grown up watching, like Victor Matfield and Bakkies Botha, Schalkberger, Willem Alberts, those Dwayne Vermeulen, those types of player. And then probably just in terms of good laugh, Australia 2012, it was brilliant. Midweek team were on fire. Played the Barbars before going out there, and then played the Brumbies, and I just it was just a great tour, to be fair. There was a good group of boys who went, and there was a decent, to be fair, group of players who weren't involved in those tests as well. So, it made and Thumper's, he says you're all men, you can go and do what you want, but make sure you behave, basically. So it was pretty good. It was a good tour to be on. Yeah.
Who did you room with?
I shared with Lloyd Williams and Liam Williams on those tours.
Okay.
Rooms of 3 then, was it?
No, it was. I did the first week with Lloyd, and then I did the next 2 weeks with Liam.
I'd imagine. I know
they tend to put it back and forth together, but they used to anyway. But now, you can't separate Gareth Davis and Liam Williams. They're
not allowed.
Nah, they literally stay together. So they pick their own roomies now. So, and even during the COVID period, you got your own room to yourself. So I've had some pretty decent roomies, to be fair.
Who's the person you don't want to room with? There's got to be one always. He's like, oh, not him.
I had Rob Evans, and he
absolutely
snored the house down. Andy Powell snored the house down.
Can imagine.
Ryan Jones constantly on his phone.
Really?
Yeah.
Not shy.
Businessman.
Yeah.
You get on with everyone, so I haven't had any real bad roomies, to be fair.
Yeah, good stuff. And you as the press, you don't have to room with other press, do you? No, you're fine. You're good. No. None of them issues on scope for you.
No, because generally each sort of organisation would send one journalist, so you kind of, in terms of accommodation, you're doing your own thing, but no one wants to most people don't want to be on their Todd socially. We're away from the work, so you tend to meet up for food and book club.
Yeah, nice. Journalist book club. That would be a good one, flying the wall. Some stories there, that's for sure. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it today, Josh. All the best with everything and kind of a season of non-playing but coaching. I'm sure you will enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
More time with the family, I hope.
Well, not at the moment because I'm Ironman training, but
tell us about this. That's your kind of your new fitness challenge, yeah?
Yeah. So when I'm quite good mates with Rich Kelly, who coaches the Ospreys, and he said, whatever you do, make sure you've got something lined up. You train for something, or because he went up to 135, 138 kilos, something like that. So he put a bit of weight on afterwards, and he was like, look, go and train for something like a high rocks, or just put something in the diary. It'll keep you fit. Now he's mad keen for CrossFit and stuff like that. He's having hernias left, right, and centre.
Oh God, yeah.
But no, I a couple of my friends, they've done the Ironman, and I always said I'm a keen cyclist. I like running. The only thing I couldn't do was swim, so a little bit of a challenge. Go in the pool initially, and now I'm swimming 2-3 times a week at the moment, and I'm really looking forward to it. Tenby Ironman, September 22nd.
Oh, there we go. We'll see him on the streets.
Yeah.
You're probably out of the house more than ever then with all that training and coaching, because that's long hours as well, coaching.
Yeah, so the coaching is taking over a little bit, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm seeing already I've since I've been doing the regional age grade team, I've seen a massive improvement just in some of their fundamentals around the game, and hopefully we can help them progress. But it is long hours and trying to squeeze the training in and around it. I've found out that Ironman is quite a selfish sport because the amount of hours you've got to put into training just to be able to swim, bike and run. But it's hopefully it'll be worth it.
He's getting his excuses in early for his time. That's what he's doing here. Al, what does your week look like now?
Couple of games of cricket this weekend.
Nice.
So I play cricket for Rada.
Oh, do you? Okay. Yeah.
So
bowler, batter, what do you do?
Batter.
Yeah.
Batter. So got 2 games at home this weekend. We're playing the MCC on Sunday.
Oh, nice.
Which is something to look forward to. So, yeah.
And I got to ask you, put in a spot, I do it with everyone. Everyone who says play golf, I'm like handicap. And then in cricket, I'm like, what's your best bat? What's your best innings?
I'll score.
Yeah.
171 not out.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's good. That's incredible. Is that the truth, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow. 171. Who got you out though? I'd be fuming because you were on the way for
I said not out, I think, do you?
That one was not out, yeah. It was a blind score was out that day. So
clap that in. Absolutely amazing. And on that note, we're not going to beat that. Thank you both once again for your time. And huge thanks to you for listening at home. Remember, you can follow us on our socials. Just search Sportin Wales. Tell your friends about us and share the love. And we'll catch you next week. Wherever you go, wherever you are, enjoy your Sportin Wales week.
Sportin Wales podcast.
Supported by Dragon Bet.
Your go-to for Welsh sports news and views.